All right, it's Matt Marchant and I am back. My camera and I have a love-hate relationship. It loves to turn off and I hate when it does. So we cut off around why do we use anger. We were talking about that second part on it deflects us from primary emotions. So could it be true that whenever we're experiencing shame or fear, those are pretty heavy things to look at? It's a bit easier to look at our anger, which means this. If it's challenging to look at our anger, that might be an indication of how much more challenging it is to look at shame and fear. So it's my opinion that as we go through this process, you may see why my approach to anger is a bit different than some other books or programs you've looked at. It's my experience that many of those things take a look at the behavior of anger, but not the belief of anger. Behavior is a lot easier to address, and there will be some stuff that we're going to talk about with behavior, looking at skills, but I think that the real deeper things in belief deal with shame and fear, and that's not as easy to talk about or look at. But let's kind of continue here. So anyways, that's number 2. And the third reason that we use anger is it becomes familiar. So we are humans, we are pattern-seeking mammals. That's what humans are. We love patterns. We look for patterns. Patterns make us feel safe and stable. There's nothing wrong with that. That's instinctual. But the challenge is, what happens when that pattern is dysfunctional? Interesting question. So we use anger just because it's familiar. So let's move on. Section 2, the behavior of anger. So a little bit of what I talked about, this is kind of behavior modification of sorts. And a lot of books or things that at least I've read is they tap only into behavior modification. Here's your behavior on anger. Here's the 10-step plan. You know, do these 3 things when you're feeling angry. You know, do this breathing, do this over here, do this here, you know, do this over here, whatever it is. And I know I'm being silly and I'm kind of teasing the process a bit. Those are valid approaches. They're valid to addressing the behavior of anger, though. I don't think they address the belief. So with that being said, Section 2 is addressing behavior. So let's look through the behavior of anger and go through a different kind of skill set that you might not have heard or approached before towards anger. So, my little acronym here for looking at our behavior of anger is called AAA your anger. Number 1, acknowledge your anger. Number 2, accept your anger. And number 3, appreciate your anger. Now, I put a note down here. Not all these need to be done at the same time. You will do these when you can. I mean, you're not going to go, oh, I acknowledge it, I accept it, woohoo, I appreciate it, cool, I'm done. It might happen that fast. It might happen in an hour, in a day, in a week, who knows. But again, acknowledge, accept, appreciate. So let's start with number 1. Let's go through acknowledging our anger. So the first step in any journey is to acknowledge where we are. When we know where we are, we can take a step ahead to where we want to go. Right? Wouldn't that be true? You're looking on a map. Let's go here. Well, where are we? I have no idea where we are on this map. No clue. Well, how are you going to take a step forward? So that's what we're doing with our anger. We're just acknowledging it. If you're listening to this, if you're in this program, pretty good chance that you've acknowledged your anger. For the most part, you've probably said, yeah, there's some anger within me. Whether you're going, yeah, there really is, or yeah, I'd consider that. Both of those are a form of acknowledgement. Whether a strong acknowledgement or, I'd consider that, it's acknowledgement. So great, we've got our foot in the door. We can kind of keep going here. So the opposite, though, of acknowledgement is denial. So let me go back to that question that we talked about in the myths of anger. What percentage of people do you think have anger at some point? And of those percentage of people, how many of them do you think have a healthy relationship, meaning they can express their anger in a healthy, optimal way? How many people may need to be hearing this information? How many people might be hearing this information? Probably a lot less than we would think might need to. So what's happening to this chunk of people that are not acknowledging their anger? Could it be that they're in denial of their anger? I know I was for a long time. I'm not sure if that rings true for you. It does for me. So I know what that's all about. And I know what that's about, to be in denial of a lot of things, not just your anger. But when we step outside of denial, the opposite's called acknowledgement. So denial is much like the mafia. Once you get in, it gets very hard to get out. Okay? So what is it that all humans crave? If I ask you, what's the one thing that all humans crave? Think about that for a second. My answer would be attention, which basically means they'd be acknowledged. It is worse, in my opinion, to feel alone while surrounded by people than to feel alone when you're isolated. So imagine living in New York City with millions of people walking by you, but feel completely alone. Wouldn't that possibly feel worse than if you lived out in the mountains somewhere and you're by yourself and you felt alone? At least you'd go, well, yeah, I feel alone, but I got deer and birds and trees around me. That's all I got. As opposed to having people brush up against you in the subway every day, but feeling completely alone. I believe it's attention that all humans want. All humans want. And I really, really believe this. No matter what people say, no matter what image they try to put up, it's attention. Okay? I invite you to consider that. So what happens when we don't acknowledge a problem? What happens if we live in denial? What happens what happens when we don't get attention? So it's my opinion that this lack of attention is a stimulation of anger. So what is denial? It is a lack of acknowledgement. Why is denial used? It's to make us feel safe and in control. When I deny something, I feel just a little bit safer. When this thing is at a distance and I can't see, it's kind of fuzzy. When I do this and I can't see too much, I might be a little safer because everything's a little fuzzy, and now I do this, whoa! Everything gets a little too crystal clear for me. Okay? And so it's kind of like denial is taking off the glasses, so things get a little fuzzy, things get a little distance, I feel safer, I can't make out what that is, I feel okay with that. The minute I have to go, oh my gosh, now I can see, I don't feel as safe and in control. So denial has its functionality, but it doesn't mean that it produces something functional in our life. So again, I'm going to say that one more time. Denial has its functionality. There's a purpose to it, but it doesn't mean that it creates something functional in our life. Okay. So what makes it so enticing? It gives us the temporary illusion that we're safe and in control. Again, it's just an illusion, in my opinion. So let's get into exercise 1. Finding our reactive pattern. So here's a quote from Daniel Siegel. We must name it in order to tame it. If you want to tame it, let's name it. That's what we're going to do. We're going to find out what is mine reactive pattern. Let me tell you a little story that I got in a book a while ago. A man was outside his house on his hands and knees, looking around in the grass. His neighbor walked up and asked, "What are you doing?" The man replied, "Looking for my key. I lost it." The neighbor got down and helped look. After a few hours, the neighbor asked, "Where exactly did you lose it?" The man replied, "In my house, but there's more light out here with which to look for it." So this guy loses his key in his house, but he goes out in the grass to look for it. His response on why he wasn't looking in the house, where he actually lost it, is, well, it's too dark in there. Why would I look in the house where it's dark to look for my key? I'll look out here in the sunlight. But yet, in the darkness is where the key is. So here's 2 possible points that I derive from the story. Number 1, when and where you lost something is where you must look. If you lost your key in the house, you have to look there. It makes no sense to go out in the grass and look for it. You can spend all your time reading books that talk about looking on the grass, going through programs, looking through the grass. But if you lost it in the darkness of the house, you might have to venture into that darkness, into that house. As uncomfortable as it may be, you will never find your key looking on the grass. Sure, it's comfortable. But let's be honest. Are you ever going to find what you're looking for? the answer would be no. Number two, another point that I derive from the story is sometimes you must look where it's dark and uncomfortable. So, yeah, it's easy to look out in the grass sometimes. It's easy to maybe not talk about some of these things. It might be easier if this video was just a 10-second video going, here's your 10 keys for dealing with your anger. Take 5 breaths. Tap here. Do this. Do this. You know, I'm being silly, but you know what I mean? It would be easier for me to give you these 10 things and you just go do those 10 things and we don't have to get into some of these behavioral beliefs things. But aren't we really just looking in the grass? Aren't we really just going, well, it's not really where I lost something. Sure, it's easier. So where we're going to go now is we may venture into some places that feel a bit uncomfortable for you. I encourage you to stick around, to stay here, stay present, continue to watch the video, and let's do this journey together, and let's jump in and dive in and see what we find out. So, I would invite you to fill out the following on your form here. We have, on the top line, it says experience, and it says Father, Mother, X, and God. So, Father, that's your father. Mother, that's your mother. Now, some of you, if you did not have a father growing up or did not have a mother growing up, we all had a surrogate of sorts. Whether that was your grandfather, your uncle, or even a neighbor. Someone who represented a father figure to you growing up. That's who we're talking about. If there's still nobody there, you can still use your biological father. You go, well, I never knew him. Perfect. You can still use him. You had a biological father. You had a biological mother. You'll see how you can still use this person even if you never met them. X would indicate the last person you were in a relationship, not the current person you're in a relationship with. The person before this current one. If you've been in a relationship for a very, very long time, and you really had no other relationship to go upon, you can use your current person you're in a relationship with. It gets there's a degree of vulnerability that is required, though, if you're using the current person. But you can. And last one is God. Now, for those of you who may not believe in God or have some sort of different view than what maybe quote-unquote a mainstream view of that word, G-O-D, might mean, it doesn't mean that it has to be any kind of specific religious view on God. We all have a concept of one. We have a concept of there is a God. And if you have a view that there is not a God, if you say, hey, I don't believe in God, perfect. We can still answer this question. You understand the concept of God. So go with what your concept of God is, even though in your belief system there is no God. Does that make sense? So we can still use these 4 boxes regardless of your views on certain things. So in that first box under experience, I invite you to write down the word most. So here is my question. As a child, what did you like most about your father? Now the box is fairly small. Typically someone will write in one word. He was this, he was that, blah, blah, blah. So, what did you like most about your father as a child? What did you like most about your mother as a child? What did you like most about your ex during that time in the relationship? And what did you like most about God as a child? So, I invite you to, if you'd like, to pause the video, write those 4 things down, really take your time, and put down maybe 1 or 2 words. I probably wouldn't put too much down. And again, when we're writing things down, try not to overthink it. Just the first thing you think of, just put it down. There's no right or wrong. This is just giving us some information to go on. So if you'd like to pause the video. So if you did or did not pause the video, great. Either ways works. The next box under most would now be least. So I invite you to answer this question. What did you like least about your father growing up? What did you like least about your mother growing up? What did you like least about your ex while you were with that person? And what did you like least about God as a child? So same thing. I invite you to answer those questions. Just try to, just off the cuff, just answer the questions. I wouldn't think about it too hard or too long. And if you'd like to go ahead and pause the video and answer those at this moment. So again, whether you did or didn't pause the video and write those down, we're going to continue on with our next question. So if you have something written in those boxes, we are going to take a look at that. So the first question is, when you experienced what you liked least about your father as a child, how did you react? Now I left a long line here. You can write down as much as you want. So whatever you experienced, whatever you liked least about your father, when you experienced that, how did you respond? So if you wrote down something like, well, my father, what I liked least about him is he was indifferent. He just didn't care. Okay. When you experienced that about your father, what did you do? Did you get mad? Did you go in your room? Did you have a book that you just kind of got lost into? What was your reaction? What did you actually literally do? Or how did you emotionally feel? Write down as much as you want. There's a long line there for you. So, and the next three questions go as follows. So if you'd like to pause and answer that question at any time, I'm just kind of going to breeze through the next three questions. So the next question is, when you experienced what you liked least about your mother as a child, how did you react? Again, feel free to answer that if you like. When you experienced what you liked least about your ex-spouse or ex-partner, how did you react? And fourth and final question, when you did or do now experience what you liked least about God, how did you or how do you react? And feel free to write that down. So again, take the time needed to write that down. Pause the video as needed. So, turning the page in our manual. So if you'd like to just kind of reflect on what you've written down, for each of these reactions above, might we label them in one of four ways? Could we say that you were either, in some sense, you were in fight, flight, freeze, or facade? And I would say, more times than not, any answer you gave or any answer anyone gave, you could distill it down into one of these four. Okay? Let's briefly explain them. Fight. It is reacting by expressing verbal or physical resistance when angered. Here's an example. To hell with you. Or any physical expression. Throwing something, yelling, hitting someone, kicking someone. So that reaction pattern is a pretty obvious one. Fighting, ah, hey, you, throwing something, whatever. Okay? Next one, flight. It's a reaction or reacting by leaving or avoiding a person or a situation when angered. It may be voiced or not be voiced. Here's an example. I'm out of here. Or they just slip away unannounced. So it's very interesting to point out this. In flight, this is not a functional reaction or response of sorts where you're leaving going, look, I'm not getting angered at this point, or I'm able to kind of respond to my anger. This just isn't working. We just need to take some time and readdress this issue. That would be more of a healthy way to deal with anger in the moment when another person you're engaged with or a situation, it's not going to get, there's no chance of any resolution happening. You know, you're dealing with conflict at 1 in the morning and everyone's tired and you're going, look, let's just shut this down and revisit this tomorrow when we've all slept. That would be a fairly optimal approach. This suboptimal approach or more dysfunctional approach is just taking off. As soon as you feel angered, you're gone. You're out. And again, it can be voiced or not. It can be, I'm out of here, or the person just is leaving. Where does so-and-so go? Every time, this person just takes off. Could be a reaction to anger. Next one, freezing. It's reacting by not reacting. Typically shown by not speaking and not leaving. Here's freezing. Not saying anything, but I'm also not taking off. I'm frozen. I can't do anything. I'm a deer in the headlights. Example would be blank look on the face, or you might have this expression, I don't know. What's going on? What? Person's interrogating the other person. I don't know. I don't know. I don't know. How are you feeling? I don't know. I don't know. That's just a frozen reaction, and that's a reaction by technically not reacting. The last one is a facade. It's reacting by creating the false impression to others and ourselves that we are not angered. This tends to be my reaction of choice nowadays. as I get older, I find myself doing more of this. It's giving this false impression, oh, I'm not angered. You know, this person just made all these accusations against me and is yelling in my face. No big deal. Here's what you might hear. Oh, that doesn't bother me. Or, here's an interesting one. They laugh during conflict. Oh, I see you're getting mad. It's my belief that anytime we see ourselves or see someone else making a joke or laughing in the face of conflict, that is a reaction that's called a facade. They are creating a facade that this is not bothering them. It's bothering the pants off of them, but they're not able to maybe acknowledge that, and so this facade helps them deal with it. These are all ways we deal with things, okay? These are all ways we deal with things. They are neither right nor wrong. This is just being human. So look back to those your list above. What tended to be your reactive pattern to the 4 people mentioned? So if you'd like to take time, pause the video, now go back and take those 4 F's, fight, flight, freeze, facade, and could we label those 4 things? Okay, here, I did this, I did this, I did this. After you do that, here's our next question. What tends to be your reactive pattern today when you feel angry? So, if I were to look at my list, I tend to personally fight or facade on how I respond or did respond to those 4 people. I typically don't flee or freeze. That's kind of my reactive pattern. I know, for the most part, that's what you're going to get. That's what I'm going to get if I feel angered. How I do it today, I tend to, out of those 2 now, I tend to do more of creating a facade. I found that as I get older, I fight less, I yell less. It's not as socially acceptable to, you know, when I was in my teen years and early 20s, it was maybe a bit more accepted to be just kind of a loud, wild child, get in fights and that kind of stuff. But now, you know, I'm almost 40 years old. You don't do that stuff. And I'm supposed to be, hey, I'm supposed to be more advanced than that. I'm learning this stuff about anger. I can't get all riled up. I just create this facade. That tends to be my reactive pattern today. So I find this exercise very important. It helps illuminate, so when I feel myself creating this facade, what it's really telling me, I'm angry, and for some reason I'm not able to address it. I'm deflecting my anger by creating a facade. Or you may be deflecting your anger by getting in a fight, taking off, or just freezing up. So these are important tools to examine, again, our behavior. We're still in just behavior. So let's go through quickly the difference between a reaction and a response. So all of these 4, they are reactions. Okay? What is a reaction? Is to act without awareness. What is a response? It is to act with awareness. So reaction is, I'm not sure why I did that or what's going on, or I'm not even sure I did do it. Did I just react? Oh gosh. You see it a lot with passive-aggressive anger. I'm not being passively aggressively I'm not being passive-aggressive in my anger. Oh really? Someone get this person a mirror. I mean, come on. You're being passive-aggressive right now. They're not aware of it. I'm not aware of it. That's a reaction. Okay, that is human to be that way. A response, though, is, oh gosh, I'm being a bit, if not a lot, passive-aggressive right now. So, how do we turn our reactions into responses? Number 1, by responding to our reaction. So, you're not necessarily not reacting, you're just having a reaction and then responding to that reaction. Give yourself permission to react, then respond. We all have a tendency to react. That is human. If you're not reacting, do this for me. Check your pulse. You may not have one if you're not reacting. The point is to not react. The point is to make the time between reaction and response sooner and sooner and sooner. So when I feel that reaction of I'm creating a facade, do I see myself creating that facade in the moment, or does a week go by and I go, oh my gosh, I remember having that conversation with so-and-so, and yeah, that really did hurt, and I did get angry from that, but I was pretending like it didn't. Wow. All right, that took me a week to figure that out, or 10 years to figure that out. We're just trying to close the gap. on reaction and response time. So that in the moment, when you feel yourself going, ha ha, oh, there's that facade again, Matt. Welcome to being human. That's a big part of it, is just being aware of it. So let's go to another little acronym I've created called AAA Your Reaction. Number 1, become aware. We have to be aware. Okay, am I reacting? Number 2, we articulate what we see. And 3, we adjust for the future. So aware, articulate, adjust. Number 1, become aware. Am I aware that I am reacting right now? Am I aware in the moment? Am I aware 10 minutes later or 10 years later? There has to be awareness. Can we control ourselves better during a reaction if we are unaware of it? If you're not aware of anything, you can't control anything. Self-control requires self-awareness, in my opinion. So awareness to our reactions is the first step. We may need to ask ourselves the following questions. Am I aware of how I typically react? That's why we just did that last exercise. Am I aware of which people I tend to react to? So now ask yourself, minus facade. My question would be, hey Matt, what people do you tend to create a facade with the most? What people in your life? Or what types of people? Am I aware of which places I tend to react in? Do I react when I'm on vacation? Do I react at work? Do I react at home? Which times of the day, month, or year do I tend to react? Am I reactive later at night, earlier in morning, around the holidays? Interesting. I need to be aware. Am I aware of why I react? That's the last question. Am I aware of why? Why am I reacting? Well, we're going to get into that in section 3. So let me give you an example I wrote down. So I yelled at Sally earlier for not getting her business paperwork to me on time. So I yelled at her, Sally, where's that paperwork? So I'm aware of it. I recognize it. Oh my gosh. I go back and say, Sally, I apologize for yelling at you earlier. It was inappropriate to do that. If I could do it again, I would not yell. I would ask in a calm voice. The sooner I can become aware, articulate, and adjust, the sooner I am able to learn about responding. The goal is to become increasingly more aware each time we react. So, look what I did. I yelled at Sally. I became aware of it. Now, whether this happened 10 minutes after I yelled or whatever, I became aware. I went back to her. If appropriate, I go back to her and articulate. Sally, if I could do it again, I would do it differently. So what I'm articulating is I'm articulating my adjustment for the future. I'm aware that I did something. I am now going to articulate to her, that wasn't right, and I'm going to articulate to her how I would like to do things differently in the future. I have found that if we do these 3 things, we're aware of our reaction, we articulate to the person that was involved in our reaction, or we just articulate it to ourselves, and in that articulation, we make the adjustment. If I could do it again, I would do it blank, blank, blank. We're really not saying this for the other person's benefit. We're saying it for our benefit. So we can hear ourselves go, this is how I would like to respond in the future. So look what's happening. We're aware and we're taking ownership of our reaction. That's the theme of this class, becoming aware and taking ownership. So, number 2, accepting our anger. When we accept something, we take responsibility for it. Accepting our anger simply means that we are taking responsibility for it. This is the next logical step after we have acknowledged our anger. So, what's an emotion? An emotion is a word that we can use to describe the feeling we have in the body. Expressing emotions at times is like trying to articulate with words our abstract feelings. What that means is this, in layman's terms. Emotions, or feelings, I should say, that we're having in the body, they're very hard to describe to another, let alone to ourselves. So when we're accepting things and taking responsibility for things, we can give things words and we can articulate things. It's very, very challenging. So we're just taking a look at an emotion and going, okay, I'm having this emotion. I'm not sure necessarily what's going on, and that's okay if we're confused by it. That process takes time to understand more and more about what these emotions are. All we're doing is we're taking ownership of what's within us, and we're asking the question, where is this coming from, and who's responsible for it? Well, in step 2, accepting it's going, I'm responsible for it. It came in here. It's not like it came out here. This emotion of anger hit me in the head, and oh, where did this anger come from? No, the anger came from here. Okay, so we're taking responsibility for it. Is it possible for another person to make us angry? What happens to our own sense of personal power when we allow others to quote unquote make us angry, or happy, or sad? I have a question. How do we benefit from accepting our own anger? When I say I own my own emotions, I own my own anger, what's the benefit of that? I'm sure we could name quite a few. Here's a question I find even more interesting than that. How do we benefit from not accepting our own anger? How do I actually benefit from not taking responsibility? So what is it called when we do not own our own anger and make someone else responsible for it? What's that called? It's called a projection. And what is a projection? Here's a couple basic definitions. It is a dysfunctional way to express subconscious emotions. It is a way to express deeper parts of us that we don't know too much about, but it's a dysfunctional way of expression. Again, we talked about, expressing is not necessarily processing, and we'll get into that deeper. Projection could be any thought or feeling about myself that I'm not ready or willing to acknowledge or accept. So, I'll place it onto you. I'll project it onto you as a way of getting rid of me. So I've got this feeling, okay? We'll say this is my anger here. I'm not willing to acknowledge or accept this. And in a game of like emotional hot potato, whoop, 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 I don't want this. Whoop, you take it, and I'll project my anger onto you because I surely do not want to hold on to this. I'm not going to acknowledge and accept this. That's a projection. A third possible definition is it's an emotional vomiting of an unwanted thought or feeling about myself. It's, you are vomiting up something that you feel you are not able to handle. The challenge is you're vomiting typically on someone close to you in a close relationship to you. Typically, projections are on people that we live with and have relationships with. You don't meet someone on the bus and go, emotionally project onto them. Typically not. So here's an analogy of projection. Projecting our anger onto others is like playing a game of emotional hot potato where we toss it to others as fast as we can without getting burned. Here's an interesting little Tibetan proverb. Using anger to solve a problem is like picking up a hot coal to throw at someone else. If you picked up a hot coal, I want to throw this at you. In the meantime, my hand is getting burned. How silly is this? We all do it. That's what a projection is. I find that to be a pretty good little description. It's like picking up a hot coal to throw at someone else. So, exercise 2, learning to fight fair. This is two things. It's learning to take and give back a compliment. It's learning to take a complaint or criticism, but it could be a compliment too. We're just not going to get into that in this lesson. But give it back. It also is, we're not going to really go into it too much. The second thing with fighting fair is not only that I could take your complaint of me and then hand it back to you and go, well, it's your complaint. I'll let you hold on to it. It's learning how to give a complaint while still owning it. So here's my complaint. You're trying to project your complaint onto me. Typically what happens is I take it and I own it and I go, I own your complaint. It's taking it going, oh, this has got your name on it. I acknowledge it and I'm going to hand it back to you. That's what we're going to get to in this lesson. We won't get into how do I express a complaint? Well, can I no longer express that I'm angry, that I have a complaint? No, you can. But it's going, hey, look, John Doe, I'm angry. I have a complaint here. I'm just letting you know about it. I own it. I create it. But I'm not going to stuff it either, and I'm not going to project it. We won't get into it in this lesson, but it's another key skill on how to resolve conflict in a very healthy manner. So, learning to fight fair. In this exercise, we will learn the basics of compassionate communication in regards to dealing with others' criticisms and complaints of us. How we deal with others' criticisms of us right there in the moment may be the key to stopping the surge of anger before it blows up. Let me repeat that. How we deal with someone's criticism of us right there in the moment could make or break the reaction and response. They say that first impressions are a big deal in a business sense. That first handshake, that first page on your website, whatever it is. Could that be true here? When someone throws a projection at you, the first word, the first sentence out of your mouth could make or break what happens. Let's go through an example. Well, first let's go through the goal of this exercise. The goal is this: to acknowledge a criticism or complaint and respectfully hand it back, but not to own it. So here's an example. Someone says to me, "Hey Matt, I don't like the way you dress. You look very unprofessional. You look sloppy." So what would be a typical response? What? Well, look at you. Look how you dress. You're sloppy too. I'm reacting. I'm getting into fight. Flight would be someone says that and I just take off. I'm out of here. Freeze. Or facade. Oh yeah, it doesn't really bother me. Oh, whatever. You know, so-and-so. But really it's bothering me. That's how typically we would respond to something like that, some sort of criticism or complaint. What if we could have some of these responses? Number one, someone says that to me. I say, "Oh, so in your experience of my clothing, you think I look both unprofessional and sloppy." Okay. Notice what I just did. I let you have ownership of it. I said, in your experience, this is what you're saying. I look unprofessional and sloppy. Okay. What I've done is a couple things. One, I've let you know that I know that's your experience. And by saying it, I'm letting you have it. You can have that experience. In your experience, this is what you're seeing. And I've restated that experience. Okay, this is the experience you're having. Okay, I've acknowledged it and I've respectfully handed it back. By saying okay, I'm not getting defensive going, "No, you're wrong." But I'm not also going, "Yeah, you're right, I look sloppy." I'm just saying, okay, that's your experience. All right. As if you come up and say, "Such and such team is the best team in baseball." Okay, I don't watch baseball. But, all right, thanks for pointing that out. That's your experience. Okay. I'm not going to try to say it's not, and I'm not going to try to say it is. Because, yeah, that's whatever. Okay. Same thing in this situation. So let's go a few more. We won't go through all those. You can say it back as a statement, or you could use it as a question. Someone says, "Hey, oh, so what I'm hearing you say is that in your personal experience of my clothing, you think I look both unprofessional and sloppy. Is that true?" What I found is important and sometimes is this. A lot of times in my experience, when someone is making a criticism of us or a complaint, it typically can be a fairly silly thing. Like, really, did someone have to come up to me and tell me I looked unprofessional and sloppy? So by restating what they said, it illuminates kind of how silly your statement was. Like, really, you walked all the way over here to tell me I look unprofessional and sloppy? Is that why you got up out of your chair, came from your desk over to my desk to say that? And you posed the question back to them. And now, let's hear their answer. Yeah, that's what I said. Oh, okay. Now what? Fighting fair is like this with words. Defense attorneys will tell you this in dealing with law enforcement. Use as few words as possible. Don't engage in conversation when you're getting arrested, because any word you give is evidence, potential evidence for your, incarceration. So you're not even obligated to answer the questions, to be quite honest. In this regards, we're going, what few words can I use? Because obviously this person's coming at me. Are they really coming at me because this person's so concerned about my appearance? Really? Probably not. There's probably something else at work here. So if I engage with too many words in this situation, I'm probably going to get caught off guard and get into... So really these experiences are, these are skills that if we work with one another one-on-one more and more, you develop these skills over and over. I just want to kind of bring this to your acknowledgement. So we won't go through the other responses, but what's basically happened is I have acknowledged the person, but at the same time made sure they understood their point of view is their own personal experience, and I won't be owning it. Thus, I'm handing it back to them. I am also not trying to change this person's mind about how they view my clothing. I'm not trying to change your view. Hey, if you think I look unprofessional and sloppy, I'm not going to try to change your view either way. What a waste of time that would be. Because I realize that they have a right to their unique perspective. Well, two reasons. One, have you ever tried to change someone's mind on anything? How effective and productive is that? Usually not very. And don't they have a right? Yeah, you have a right to have any view you want. You can sit over there and think anything you want about my clothing. I'm just not going to own it. Okay? Once I try to change someone's mind, the game is over and they own me. So anytime I get defensive, go, no. You're wrong. Let me prove to you why I am not sloppy. Now you own me. I've taken my power and I said, here's my power. I don't want it anymore. You can have it. The same is true if I just go, yeah, you're right. I'm sloppy. I'm unprofessional. Wow, I'm so glad you came over here and told me that. I've given you my power. So, when someone owns us, that's what's happening, we're being owned, it means we have willfully given our power away to them. This is the root reason for much of our anger in relationships, in my opinion. We get into things and no, yes, no. And the other person is now owning us because we're getting into this battle. Or someone's going, yes, this is true. Okay. And there's this displacement of power. One person is not retaining their power, which is not being authentic. The other person is taking on power, the illusion of power, which also is not authentic. Neither one of the people are being authentic to their own power. It happens a lot in relationships. So, when we fight, flight, freeze, or facade from a criticism or complaint made about us, we own it. When we have one of those 4 Fs, if I say, you look sloppy, and you 4 Fs, and we stay in that, I own you now. So going back to reaction and response, that's why it's important that when someone says something and you feel one of those 4 Fs, one of those reactions, have that reaction, feel that reaction, but respond. Go, and that's what this exercise is. It helps us respond. So now when you made that comment to me, sure, it made me angry that you walked all the way over here. I mean, come on, man. You walked all the way over here to say that. Sure, it stimulated some anger. But instead of going, hey, you look sloppy too, you bum, I can feel that and go, and learn to fight fair, which is now a response. So this is, fighting fair is a response to our reaction. Moving on, third thing is appreciating our anger. We're dealing with the behavior. When you appreciate something, you give it value. When something is appreciated, it may also feel safe. Does appreciation for something help us learn more about it? I would say yes. When we appreciate something, we are more apt to learn about it. If you appreciated trigonometry, you would learn it. I never appreciated trigonometry and never wanted to learn it. That's why I never took the class. If I would have gotten in that class, oh my gosh, I don't appreciate math. What do I need this for? I don't want anything to do with it. Don't make me take that class. Same with this stuff, with our anger, that is. So, is my anger here to help me learn something about myself? For me, I would wave a big flag to that question that says, yes, my anger is here to help me learn something about myself. So, could it be true that anger shows us what we believe about feeling valued and feeling safe? So, here's some questions about value. Do I value my feelings and emotions? Do I value myself? And who taught me about value? Is my anger here to reveal the answers to those questions? Is my anger right now not just some coincidence that's just happening? Why does this happen to me? There's a deeper purpose. Could it also be true of safety? Do I feel safe expressing my anger? Do I feel safe and secure in life? Who taught me about safety and security? So I wonder if all those 6 questions right there, if my anger is really to help me answer those questions. So now it gives this anger a way different feel, a way deeper meaning. I'm not just getting angry, and it's just not something that just, gosh, just happened to me. Like just the weather, it just happened to be sunny today. It's what it is. No. There's a meaning to this anger. For me, there is. And I invite you to consider that question. Is there meaning to your anger? So, what do feelings of being unvalued and unsafe uncover within us? When I feel unvalued and unsafe, it uncovers two things for me: my shame and my fear. Let's get into that. Shame and fear. Shame and fear are primary emotions that, when left unacknowledged, can and usually will create the secondary emotion of anger. It is my opinion, it is my experience that this next sentence is true, and I do have a highlighter. I was going to say, if I had a highlighter, which I do, I would highlight this next sentence. Again, this is my experience. The root of all anger is shame and fear. Again, the root of all anger is shame or fear. That happens to be very true for me. I wonder if it is, or there is some part of that that is true for you as well. So, let's talk about shame. What is shame? It is a feeling that I am bad, I am flawed. Not what I did, but I myself am. Contrasted by guilt. Here's what guilt is. Guilt is, I have done something bad or wrong. So, I'm not bad or flawed, I did something bad or flawed. That's guilt. We're talking about shame. Shame indicates that we as a person are bad or flawed. It may also indicate that there is no fixing us. Hey, if you're bad, if you're flawed, if that's intrinsic to who you are, hey, there's no fixing you. That's shame. Guilt is, no, it was a behavior that can be fixed. Shame is, there's no fixing you. Whereas guilt, we can make a better choice next time. So what is fear? The feeling that I am not in control. Fear tries to get us to believe that we have control over the things that in reality we do not. While the things we have control over are left unattended. So fear says, oh, control this situation. Really, you don't have control over it. While these things over here, I really do have control over it, but I'm not controlling. So I got these emotions over here that I really have control over, but I'm over here being afraid of World War III. I'm over here afraid of the economy. I'm over here afraid of politics. Hey, did you vote? Okay, great. That was your 1 cent you got to throw in the pot. That's all you can do about it. In reality, right? I'm not discounting or discrediting doing social programs or cultural programs to make a difference, but I'm saying to get wrapped up in the fear of that, do we really have that much control over it? While I'm negating my feelings over here. Would my time be better spent taking responsibility for my own feelings I really have control over? And that's what I see fear does to me. Oh, here's the things I actually can control. Oh, but what's this over here? I have no control over it, but I'm going to spend all my time dealing with this. That's fear. So, if shame and fear are emotions, are they bad? Well, no. We talked about that earlier on. And again, it's my opinion that they're not. You might view them as bad or good and label them. I'm okay with that. I would invite you to consider, though, if they are bad, why? Why would they be bad? And if they're bad, then what's good? And is it that black and white, that they're always bad? Could it be they are road signs to invite us into more healing? And could this be true? These parts of shame and fear, they come up in our life. They show us the parts within us that have yet to heal. Could that be true? Shame and fear is present in our life because they show us the parts within us that have yet to heal. I know that's true for me, and I wonder if that's true for you. And we'll get into that more in section 3. So what makes shame and fear destructive in our lives? It's my opinion that it's not the initial shame or fear, right? It's not bad, but it's the shame of our shame and the fear of our fear. So let me slow down and go back on that. So, I am feeling afraid right now about this situation. To feel fear is to be human. Thank you. You have a pulse. Welcome to being a human, in my opinion. You're feeling afraid. Great. Don't deny it. Don't be enslaved to it. Just go Gosh, I'm feeling afraid. Now that I'm feeling afraid, what happens if I go, oh my gosh, I can't believe I'm feeling afraid. What do I do now? Now you're feeling fear about your fear. What if you could just go, I'm feeling fear, and instead of going, oh, what do I do? I'm feeling afraid. And just getting trapped into that fear cycle of going, I'm feeling fear. I wonder where that's coming from. I'm curious to investigate it a little bit deeper. Now you're feeling fear, but you're not feeling the fear of your fear. I hope that makes sense. The same will be true of shame. I'm feeling ashamed, and I'm okay with that. I'm curious why I am feeling that way, and I'm going to look into that. Now we're not shaming our shame. Big difference in my opinion. One is being accepting our humanity and reflecting. The other is kind of accepting our humanity, but then just getting enslaved by those feelings. So, to feel shame or fear is human, no more, no less. It is important to remember to try not to shame our shame and try not to fear our fear. What might it sound like to not shame our shame? I feel shame about this. I'm curious why I feel that way. What might it sound like to not fear our fear? I'm afraid about this, and I'm okay with that. So, observe your shame and fear. Judge it as well if you need to. Judge it if you need to. Observe it. But can we learn to experience it as we would any other emotion? Emotion, again, is like a street sign. It's going to help us along our journey. So, what's the opposite to shame and fear? It is feeling valued and safe. So, shame, the opposite of that is I feel valued. Fear is I feel safe. If you're feeling valued, you will not feel shame. If you're feeling safe, you will not feel fear. So what really is anger? What really is anger? It is a symptom of our feelings of shame. It is a symptom of our feelings of fear. That's my opinion, and I wonder if it's true for you. When we feel angry, what really triggered us was feelings of shame, meaning I am not enough, I am not valued. What triggers us from our fear is this: I am not safe, I am not in control. So when I'm getting angry, am I really angry at what I say I'm getting angry at? Am I really angry that someone came over here and told me I look sloppy? Or is it triggered some shame in me? If we can find the source of this shame and fear, we can learn to experience it, not deny it, not deflect it, and have a better opportunity to becoming friends with our anger. So what is a healthy way to express our anger? To process it. Let's go through expression versus processing. What is an expression? It is a retrieving and releasing of a thought, feeling, or emotion. So here's expression. I'm retrieving, I feel this anger. I'm just going to emotionally vomit this. Whew! Got rid of that. I expressed my anger. Whew! I feel better. Kicked the dog on the way home. Drove my car up on the grass. Slammed the door. Thanks, I expressed my anger. Pretty functional, huh? I would say no. Not functional at all. Although it is an expression, sure it's an expression. I would say going postal, that's an expression of anger too. Not by any means a way to express anger, even close to being optimal. Expression of anger could be this: I'm going to give you the silent treatment. I'm not going to talk to you for 3 days. Or I'm going to withhold my love from you. I'm going to withhold things in the bedroom from you. That's expressing your anger too. I'm letting you know. You're not getting any of this. I'm not giving you any attention. I'm expressing my anger. Is that functional? I would say no. It's releasing, but releasing doesn't mean it's functional. It is used to deflect emotion. I don't want this inside of me. It uses the right hemisphere of the brain only. It uses the side of the brain that cannot use words. So that's expression. Oh, yeah, you got it out. You're expressing it, but not very functional. So here's my question. How do you currently express your anger? When you feel angry, what do you do? How do you get it out of you? Do you use more aggressive means, more passive means? Do you yell, scream? Do you withhold love from people in your life? Do you give them the silent treatment? Interesting question. Here's another interesting question. If you're able to answer that last. How has that been working for you? Is that working for you right now? If that expression is working for you, well, so be it. But if it's not, let's continue. Are there other options available to you? I believe there are, and let's get into it. What is processing? Processing is the retrieving and reflecting on a thought, feeling, or emotion. So, both retrieve, both experience the same anger. One just releases it, one reflects on it. So one goes, whoa, I got this anger. You take it, the other goes, oh, I got this anger. I'm going to look more into this and see why I got this anger. That's processing, in my opinion. The other is expressing. I've done a ton of expressing. Not much, if any of it, has been functional. Processing, on the other hand, for me, is highly functional. I can reflect on it. Processing is also decoding an emotion, not deflecting. I've not got my shield and going, I'm blocking all this emotion. I'm looking at it, I'm breaking it down, I'm analyzing, I'm decoding. What is this really? It would say, I'm curious about why this is inside of me. It uses more the left hemisphere of the brain to make sense out of the right hemisphere of the brain. So the right hemisphere is getting angry or getting passive. The left hemisphere is go, okay, slow. Okay. Let's see if we can figure this out. It's integrating both hemispheres of the brain. Expressing is just your right hemisphere of the brain. And that's why a lot of times when we express our anger, we don't know why we do it. We're only using one hemisphere of the brain. We're not integrating both of these hemispheres and both of these parts. Okay? So, can we express anger without processing it? Yes. You can come home, yell and scream. That doesn't mean you're processing it. It happens fairly often. What might happen if we do this? Well, here's an example. We can express and rid ourselves of the initial anger through exercise, but then we become a slave to that form of expression. Or we must find new ways to express it. So let me go through that a bit more detail. I've had people, when I get angry, I go lift weights. When I get angry, I go for a run. When I get angry, I go do this. Yes, that's an expression. And that is probably a bit more optimal expression of anger than, let's say, getting drunk, hitting someone, being passively aggressive, withholding love. Sure, who could argue that exercise or riding a bike or going to a Tai Chi class even is bad? But let me ask you this. In that moment, when you're hitting the weights, when you're running, when you're doing your things, are you really reflecting on your anger? Is that form of exercise, are you really able to reflect on it? You may be, but I'm saying this. It would be, for me, in my experience, that now what happens, if I use this physical